welcome to Can You Game On It. This week I have a device that I'm really excited about. Okay, I look forward to this device every year. I kind of want it every year, but there are things that hold me back. Money. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one. Okay, this is currently their best offering, or rather their best version of the device so far. This small thing in my hand here, this is a phone. I know, you're like, oh, I've never seen a phone that small before. Psych, you thought! Ahaha! Yeah, this is a foldable smartphone. Think of it as like your normal phone, but you can fold it. Oh, this is so cool. Okay, well, I'm really excited about this phone. Okay, before I get to that, this is the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 3 5G. That's a long name! Again, I just want to emphasize that this is a foldable smartphone with 5G though. And this is Samsung's latest addition to their foldable devices. And honestly, out of all their foldable devices, I really think this one is great because it's very compact, it's small, and most importantly, back when I was in school, right? Back when I was in school, like, we would illegally bring phones to school. We were allowed back then. I don't know how it is now, but you know. And everyone or any girl that had the Razer, the Motorola Razer as in the Razer phone, not the Razer brand or the Razer character from Genshin. Motorola Razer was the flip phone back then, okay? It was hot pink and it was cool. Like, if you were mad at your boyfriend, you're like, oh, I hate you, I want to break up with you, and then you just like, pop. Oh, that felt so satisfying. But you know, harder. You can't really do that hard with this one. But you know what I'm trying to say, okay? You know what I'm trying to say. And now we haven't really seen this type of phones in a while. I think 2019 was the first, 2019 I think, maybe it was 2019, was the first time we started seeing this kind of phones make a return, and I am here for it, okay? I am absolutely here for it. For now though, after all my ranting, finally, CK, do the intro. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, let's talk a little bit more about the specs of this device. It runs on the brand new Qualcomm SM8350 Snapdragon 888 5G processor. It comes with 8 GB of RAM, 128 GB of internal storage, a 6.7-inch foldable dynamic AMOLED display, and this is obviously by Samsung, and when it's folded, it's only around 1.9 inches only, which is really cool. A 3,300 milliamp battery. I'm actually quite surprised, because it's not a lot, but it is understandable though. It is a smaller device. It only weighs 183 grams and comes with 15 watts fast charging. Not the fastest fast charging I've seen, but fast enough though. As you can see here, the screen does have the foldable dynamic display. As you can see, this is Samsung's own creation, which I am still very amazed at till this day. I never thought we'd see a day back then that we can fold screens. Does that mean that we can finally in the future fold books? Who knows? And of course, on the front here as well, you do also have a secondary display, and I think this looks much better than the previous one. And if I'm not mistaken, you can actually use your phone with this display over here altogether if you install an APK. But as we all know, third-party apps are very scary, especially if it's not downloaded through the Samsung Store or the Google Play Store. So install at your own risk. But you can use this front display as a selfie camera, because we all know the back camera is obviously the superior camera. So let me just show you guys how I do it. So basically, you guys just have this on, and then like just that. So you can see me, right? I'm doing a selfie, right? Then if you turn on this thing over here at the top here, just put cover screen preview, and voila, it's as though I am taking a selfie. It's a very tiny one, but I think it's good enough. It kind of reminds me of those retro cameras back in the day. The Instax, you do have like a mirror in front. It's just really tiny. You can't really see through the viewfinder, but I think it does remind me of that. And I guess you can, you know, play around with that kind of stuff. Alright guys, now let's talk about the performance. I just want to reiterate one thing, that this happens in every single fold phone. We also have here the Samsung Galaxy Fold as well. Both devices that can be folded. As you can see here, they actually do have a crease in the middle. If that's not your thing, you might want to skip out on this one. Also, another thing to note that this display is still extremely fragile, so you don't use your fingernails to touch it to, don't have long nails if you're gonna play video games on this, because you can ruin the display. Alright, so let's talk about the performance. So in general, as usual, I tried out my favorite games: Genshin Impact, Pubg Mobile. We also had Injustice 2, Asphalt 9, Wild Rift. I would do Pokemon Unite, but I forgot Pokemon Unite is my new favorite game. But yeah, that's that. Okay, let's start with Genshin Impact, the hard and heavy hitters first. Generally, if you have this processor for this phone, I would highly recommend playing Genshin on it. I don't think it should be a problem. But the biggest problem with this phone and this processor is heat. Because of how compact and small this phone is, obviously you can tell that cooling is not really the best. So even as I play Genshin on low, I felt the phone get pretty hot. It didn't lag or anything. Actually, no, it did. It did have some frame rate from some frame drops. It wasn't the most stable, but it was definitely still playable. I thought in the beginning it was because I was recording on the phone itself, but even when I wasn't recording, it was still the same thing. So definitely, I can say Genshin is definitely still playable. I didn't have a problem playing it, but you do notice that it's not like the smoothest experience. And if I were to kick it up more, I don't want to do that. I don't want to overheat the phone. I don't want to melt my phone, which is honestly a disappointment because this phone does have one of the best processors around. The input though for this phone was pretty alright. I didn't have a problem with that, but because of the heat, I think there were moments where I felt like it wasn't sensitive enough and it wasn't really reacting to my touch. And I felt like it was either slightly delayed or so, but I'm not sure whether it was from the heat or because I wasn't pressing hard enough. So in terms of the screen though, it's definitely a lot more wider than your conventional phones, which means that you do see a lot more, and it's actually really great for Genshin because it's a wider area means you can see more, and I definitely really enjoyed that. I mean, when you think about it, I did when I did a review on the Huawei gaming monitor before, I really liked the wide display, and this is no exception. Same thing here. It was very wide. I was able to see more, and the thing about it is that I felt, but for some reason though, I felt like it felt like a lot more cramped to play on this. I can't tell whether this phone is not tall enough, wide enough, and sometimes it felt like the character buttons were really tiny, and I accidentally would press the Alt instead of changing characters. But hell, I feel like that happens a lot for a lot of mobile players in general, so no biggie at all. Overall, playing Genshin on this is an alright experience. If I were to own this phone, I wouldn't really be playing Genshin on this. There are other devices I would prefer playing on, but if I were to just play on the go, it's alright. It's alright. Alright, so now let's talk about Pubg Mobile for you mobile FPS enthusiasts out there. As you know, Pubg Mobile can be a little bit more taxing for your device, especially because the graphics can be very heavy, especially if you play on highest. So for this phone, the only graphic option available is HDR. You'll notice that for Pubg Mobile in general, there are phones that can run more, but in general, HDR is the highest, and I kicked it up also with Ultra FPS. So let's talk about how it ran. I felt like for wider screens, I didn't really like because it is very I felt like I had too much to see when I play Pubg Mobile on wider devices. But the thing is, I didn't hate it on this. I didn't feel like I missed out on anything. And because Samsung's quality of their screens, because it's very bright, very vibrant, it was very easy for me to pinpoint the enemies despite where they are, even when they are far away, which is really nice. But the only problem that came with it is this crease, guys. I don't know how to explain this, but this crease is actually very noticeable, especially if you're playing under a light like where I am right now. You can actually see the shine, and when you can actually see the shine, sometimes it gets pretty distracting. Like right now, I can see my face in two. I feel like I'm kind of like cross-eyed when I actually notice it. And what's the worst part is that if there's a loading screen when it's black, like a black loading screen, it actually shines extra. You can see two of your faces there, which is honestly the most horrible thing on the planet because you get kind of like cross-eyed. But in general though, like if you are playing not under a straight light, it's not that noticeable if you are in game. So I don't recommend using it like this when you're like under straight light because it is pretty distracting. But otherwise though, let's talk about the audio for this phone. It's great, it's top notch, it's really loud. Like I was actually on Discord with my boyfriend and I didn't even have it on the high. It had like maybe like 10%, 15%. He was like, oh, that's so loud. And I was like, oh yeah, it does still sound pretty loud and actually really, really good as well. In terms of like directional audio, this does come with stereo speakers, which means that the cues, you don't really have to rely too much on in-game cues. You can still rely on audio and it's still really, really good. Of course, as I mentioned so many times, when you are gaming FPS games, headphones, earphones are a must. But you know, if you're just playing casually, I don't hate it. It's actually pretty good. So other than that, let's talk a little bit about the heat on PUBG Mobile. The phone did get slightly warmish, a little warmer than I would like. It's not hot, but definitely not uncomfortable either. But you can notice the warmth on the top side of the device, especially toward this side. So do be careful when you're gonna play it for long hours. Alright, now let's move on to Wild Rift. Wild Rift though, as you can tell, like I already talked about this so many times, Wild Rift is one of those games that are super optimized for across a lot of devices, especially if you're playing on phones like the ROG, which have the 120 Hertz display support. Yeah. So for now though, this phone does come with a 120 Hertz display. Forgot to mention that earlier, but Wild Rift is not offered in 120 Hertz for Wild Rift itself for this phone. So you are going to have to play on 60 FPS. Regardless though, it's actually really interesting because a lot of the phones I reviewed before when I'm playing Wild Rift didn't really have an issue with heating. I feel like I had that more with Pubg Mobile and Genshin. Wild Rift for this time around though, I did actually feel very, very warm. It was actually very, very warm for me to play on this. It didn't bother me too much, but it was kind of like alarming because, as I said before, never really seen that before on a lot of devices. So as I mentioned before earlier, this is probably because of the form factor as well. The cooling isn't that great. So yeah. So let's talk about Injustice now. Injustice, a fighting game, 120 Hertz, very, very smooth. Love it. Smooth like butter. Honestly, I feel like I play a lot better on this phone. I'm not sure why. I was actually said in my last video, like I was saying like, oh, I'm really struggling when I'm playing Injustice. But this time around though, I feel like I'm playing a little bit better. Not too sure whether it's because the screen is a lot longer, not too sure if I like the display, but it is. And the input though, for that game though, surprisingly for that game, the input actually was really, really responsive. I can't tell if on Genshin the input was a little bit worse because of how heavy the game is. I'm not too sure at this point, but I'm starting to think that right now. And honestly, the phone did get a little bit more on the warmish side as well, just so you guys know. Now, finally, that's something I really want to talk about this phone, is that when you have this phone like this, you are able to have a split screen sort of view where you can actually have two apps running at the same time. I actually was able to run Pokemon Unite as well as Genshin Impact on the top here, which was really, really fun. I mean, I can't play two games obviously, but it was really fun to see how far I can go with this phone. And honestly, they both ran no problem, but I think Genshin had a lot more frame drops, so I don't recommend doing that. But it's actually really nice though when you do that. I would really like because the thing is, when you have it like this, the games become like so like cut off in the middle because like a box and a square. So if say like you have a boyfriend or a girlfriend who loves texting and you're playing like another game, just like have it like on split screen, text them while playing, or you could just like watch YouTube while texting. It's also really nice too. I saw someone online turn their phone into an emulator as well for Pokemon. That was also really, really cool, worth checking out, absolutely. Also, another thing I really want to highlight about this phone is Game Boost. Game Boost can be accessed when you get into game and you press a button at the bottom here. It allows you to check the settings, how you want your game to be. So for me, I personally maxed out everything because that's how I am when I game. I like my game session to be super maxed out on everything, and I don't like any interruptions. You can actually choose which phone calls you would like to see, which phone calls you want to reject when you're gaming. You can choose how many FPS, and you can even record through Game Boost yourself, and I think it's actually a lot more preferable for you to record on there. So yeah, you can either choose to record from the toolbar or from there, but personally I think recording from there, it gives you a nicer optimization when you play the game. But sometimes when you record from the taskbar itself, your phone does tend to lag, or sometimes it gets a little bit hot. This is not really the case for the game bar. Alright guys, let's talk a little bit about the pros and cons of this device. So the pros, I absolutely love the form factor, I love the display, I love the speakers, and it's just overall just a great phone in general. Even the price is also, it's not like the cheapest phone out there, but for these specs plus this super cool technology, 3,399 ringgit is actually a pretty alright price. So speaking of that though, if you want to check out the price for your own countries, please check your own country's respective Samsung websites because you can get it right now. If it's not sold out, because it's absolutely sold out in Malaysia. God dang it! Alright guys, so the cons for this phone though, I just have to say the crease is still very distracting. I think you will be able to get used to it, but for me though, if you're gonna play video games on this, if you're playing games like PUBG, what if someone just walks in the middle of a crease? Oh man, that would be so irritating. And also another thing that I'm not very happy about is the cooling. I understand though, form factor, because it's very small, the cooling will be an issue, so that's something you have to watch out for if you plan on getting this phone and you plan on gaming on it. For now guys, golden question a day is, can you game on a Samsung Galaxy Z Flip3 5G? Whoa, nearly messed up there. You can, but with limitations. You aren't able to really push it up all the way to highest in terms of graphics. You will be dealing with some heat issues as well as some frame drops here and there because of that. But other than that, it's a pretty great phone. For now guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm gonna be spending some more time with this phone before it gets taken away from me. I really love this phone so much. Please don't take away my baby.